12 CF 55504A, State of Florida versus William Woodward. We'll note the presence of Mr. Woodward at council table with Mr. Eisenmenger and Mr. Eisenmenger, and the presence of Mr. Respis and Mr. Shiner on behalf of the state. So we were publishing 147. The video, I think we estimated about 2 more hours. Is that correct? So is there anything we need to address before we bring the jury back in and continue the publication? Okay, get the screen down. All right, let's bring the jury in. Thank you. The jury is not all here. Oh, we're still waiting on two members. Okay. All right, so I guess we'll just wait a few more moments. Hopefully they'll arrive. I know there was this time an accident 95 to the south, so I don't know. Okay, well, we can at least get set up, and hopefully as soon as they arrive, then we'll get started. Thank you. Please be seated. The jury is present in the courtroom once again. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning. Good morning.
Did you all follow my instructions during our overnight recess?
Yes.
Is anyone aware of any violations of any of my instructions?
No.
All right, very good. The state may continue with the publication of 147 in evidence.
Before the road again, I want to take you through this sequence, and then I'll stop it. And with the whole sequence, I know that it's important to you in certain things that you can bring it to the attention of the court. But for this particular sequence, I want you to let the whole thing play through. When it's present, you're constantly listening and watching at your window during this whole period of time. Is that correct? That is correct, sir. And you're in a position when you can hear things. You're not relying on the recording or listening to the recording on a later date. These are things that you actually can recall in terms of happening at that moment in time. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. And when I told you that I was 2 windows back, when I saw them approach in my direction, I knelt down and cracked my window and gave myself an air gap. Now I can hear perfect.
Okay.
I don't even need the camera. I don't even need I don't need anything. I can hear it and I can see.
Okay. Now, one other question.
Yes,
If it describes your heightened alert, if it describes your concern, have you armed yourself at that moment in time?
that's right. I didn't need it.
Okay. I'm going to stop for a minute. So much Woodward, you made part of this segment of play. What I'm trying to establish for the record is, during this whole segment, basically through, she did it up to 22:43. Again, this whole segment of time, you're listening to when you actually hear these comments. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. Now, rather than me play them for the court, tell the court the types of things that you recall hearing from these people during this 10-minute sequence of less than a sequence.
There was a specific threat made to my daughter Amy.
What was the specific threat that
It
you
was a
recall?
sexual threat made to my daughter Amy.
What was the nature of that sexual threat?
It was about it was a sexual innuendo. And it was about involving money to the tune of $25. And that
Who made that threat to you?
was really good.
Okay. How did that threat make you feel?
That was.
Did it bother you as much as the day that they had threatened to sodomize your daughter?
Oh, yes.
Did you get your daughter and get a shoe for his wife because he made that threat?
No, sir, I did not.
Why not?
Yes. You know, do.
Well, did you hear any other kinds of comments that you recall during this 10-minute sequence?
Yes, so there were other comments referring to sexual misconduct on their part, for my wife, and toward my daughter.
All right.
But when they mentioned the word Ava, that would be big cause for alarm, because now they had mentioned her by name.
Okay. Can you specifically recall hearing them? Not what was captured on...
No, I still have my window.
Okay.
I still have my eyes focused on this trap.
Okay. And you also mentioned earlier that you had heard some comments about fighting you and dressing. Did you hear any more comments along those lines during this 10-minute
Yes,
period?
sir, I did.
Who was making those comments, if you could identify them?
Bruce, Roger, Jerry. There was Jerry Henry at the corner.
And how did the threats about fighting make you feel?
Well, that was how it started with us. Because I didn't want to be lured out of my house to a gang war.
Now, did you see
Listen to that crowd.
Were they holding any weapons at that point in time?
Somebody had in their hand a blunt instrument.
Okay.
Yes, sir. There was a blunt instrument in the hand of somebody at the corner. And you're going to hear them coming up. I'm going to tell you what you're going to
Well, tell me what you expect to be shown, what you recall will be coming up in this time sequence. Take a moment.
What scared me is when they were sitting down at the corner and they have this blunt instrument, they start beating on the concrete. They have a piece of steel that you can visibly hear, and I can hear, and I'm watching.
Okay. And what was it that specifically concerned you about that?
Because it's a piece of steel. Now, I'm going to make one thing clear. When I got down on my knees, if you take the line of sight from my window, I have to stand up to look over my trailer.
Okay.
All right? I got down on my knees to crack the window so that I could have the sound come in. I'm standing up to look at the crowd. I still got visual on these people.
Okay.
All right? So I want to make clear that there's a trailer and there's the crowd. There's a line of sight directly from my window to that crowd.
Do you recall who that piece of steel?
Who's with it? Was it sitting at the corner with it in his hand? Beating on the street corner.
This one is 2245, but... This might be.
Who's got the video? I need to tell you about this conversation that just took place. It just passed by.
Okay.
They're conspiring to lure me out of the house.
What did you hear that led you to that conclusion?
They wanted to get me to fight so that they would have a reason for me to go to jail.
What did you hear that led you to that? Not the conclusion you're reaching, Mr. Woodward. What words did you hear from what people that you recall that led you to the conclusion they were trying to get you to come out and fight?
I'm watching the two girls, Carrie and Jessica, talking to each other about the fight between me and one of the males out in the street. To get me out, if they can get me out of the house into a fight, then we can go to jail.
Okay. And you can hear that clearly from where you were.
I can hear that perfectly. That was caused for harm to me. That's why I asked you to stop that, because I wanted to bring that to your attention.
Now, Mr. Woodward, let me ask you a question. You already told us about you saw Mr. Blake with this piece of steel and heard whatever he was doing, that caused you concern. Even if none of these people had had anything in their hands, did you have any concerns over their ability to cause physical harm to you just with their bare hands?
Yes, I did.
Why?
Because Bruce is Bruce can fight, Roger can fight, Gary can fight, they outweigh me. Plus with the three girls. That's 6-1.
Now, there were various times when you offered to fight them one-on-one, is that correct?
1-on-1, yes, sir, but not 6-on-1.
Was that your concern that night?
Yes, sir, it was.
Trying to move quickly through this.
Are you going backwards now?
I'm going backwards because I think I skipped what I was trying. Mr. Barry has to see if I can pull up that time. I'm going to sorry.
That is correct.
Okay. Now, let me, you hear these people talking, you hear them making a plan to try and get you out of the street and get you to fight and get you put in jail. How are you feeling at that point?
At that point, pretty doggone scared, because they just heard Roger yell, "Come on out, bitch!" I'm not ready to die at this point. I'm staying in my house.
Do you have any concerns on whether or not they're going to wait to see if you come out or not, or whether they're going to do something else?
Yes, sir, they were concerned.
At that point in time, even with those concerns, had you armed yourself yet?
No, sir.
Did you have any thoughts about going out and getting your gun and just shooting all 6 of them for what they'd done up until that point in time?
No, sir, I didn't.
Now, at or around this point in time, did you hear anything that led you to concern that they might have any other weaponry other than that steel piece of whatever it was?
No, that they had firearms, bats, and golf clubs. Yes, I was caused for concern. If that is your question.
Yes, sir. At any point this evening, before the actual shooting, did you ever receive any information that led you to conclude that they did not have access to firearms?
No, sir.
Did you ever receive any information before actual shooting, that they were not actually armed with firearms. I know it's a little confusing, but there was a point in time, we can get to in a minute, that you actually went out to various positions on your property where you could see them even more clearly, correct?
Like that, yes,
Yeah. Even when you were in a position to see better, were you able to ever clearly see that these people were not armed with firearms? Were you able to verify, right up until the moment you shot them, that they were not armed?
no, sir, I was not able to verify. But I knew they had weapons and had access to them.
After you shot them, were you able to verify that they were armed?
After the fact, sir.
Okay.
And only after the fact.
All right. Yeah. At any point from your vantage point inside the house, do you hear any conversation about guns or firearms while you were in the house?
At this point in time,
Anytime you're in the house, before you decide to exit the house, do you hear any conversation? I'm going to get to some other stuff. Do you hear any conversation about guns?
yes,
Who did you hear talking about guns, and what is your recollection of what was being said?
well, there was an incursion upon my property by Bruce and Roger.
What do you mean by an incursion upon your property?
Well, there was a conversation on their property by the girls that I heard and saw.
What did you hear in that conversation?
The girl said, they've got a gun. Oh my God. To that effect, they've got a gun. I see them with my own eyes walking across the street with Gary in tow. Walk up into my driveway, up to the back of my wife's car. And they're looking at my camera. I'm watching from my kitchen bay window at this point. And I can hear them talking about sexual references of raping my wife. And about how her... I can hear Bruce and Roger discussing. How my wife been doing it, Jason? I'm not property. Oh my God, I'm not behind my wife's car. You're staring at my video camera.
How did that make you feel?
Terrible.
Good, make you angry.
Yes. It horrified me that they were on my property with a weapon. After they had just got done talking about it, the two girls, and they walked up the street into our property. Gary turned around, I watched him walk back to his property.
Did you get your gun and shoot?
No, I did not.
Why?
Because you don't do
Because you were angry.
it. It doesn't matter. Emotions do not control you.
They had said horrible things about your wife. They had made threats. You believe they had a gun. Why didn't you just shoot them?
Because a reasonable person doesn't act irrationally like that.
What did you do?
I can't lie to them.
And did there come a point in time as you're watching and observing what they're doing, that you heard something, some sound, that led you to conclude that they not only had firearms, but they were doing something?
Yes, but right after this engagement, when we're talking about when we out into the street to fight, to get me to go to jail, they walked back up into their tent area, and they touched fire a firearm. And I distinctly heard from my house, with my window cracked, 4 cracks of a .22 automatic firearm. Unmistakable cracks of a .22 automatic rifle or pistol. Now, it was loud enough that I am willing to testify that it was a pistol because of the loudness of a short barrel.
Okay. Was there any doubt in your mind at that point in time, first of all, that the sounds were coming from the Henry Lake, the core part of the area?
Yeah, because as soon as they walked back to the tent area, I could hear a discussion that was muffled, and I heard, "Bang, bang, bang!" Coming right outside the window. It's a line of sight. It didn't come from behind me. It didn't come from the north of me or the south of me. It came right straight from due west.
Okay, give me just a moment. You're going to point to the inboard.
Yes, sir. That is a 22 automatic. I know because I own one. My dad owns one. He owns two, a pistol and a rifle.
So at that point in time, what's going through your head?
Just for me and my family. And that was serious. They just talked about, with me here, that they want to draw me out to the road for a fight and get me to go to jail. They just made an incursion to my property to make some horrible references about raping my wife. Now they just walked up into the yard and just started laughing.
Why didn't you call 911?
They don't come. The last time I called the cops, it took them 10 minutes to get there. Left me hanging down the road with my dog. Out and exposed. With nothing to protect me.
So what did you do after you heard that? Those sounds.
At around PM, exactly as my microwave oven digital readout, I took a closet and tried to relax myself.
Okay. What else did you do?
Started deep breathing. Relax. And calm myself back. Because now what they were talking about started to unfold the whole, which was to kill. Now, true. Now, I've got firearms. There's been a test fire. I've got an incursion upon my property, which I've witnessed, firearms, which I've heard, and the threats to come get me to get out there on the road so they can keep me in jail. That's three.
After you take confidence, take some deep breaths to calm yourself. What action, if any, did you take?
Continue. Deep breathing, just relaxing. I went back, checked on my wife and kids briefly, to make sure they were still sleeping, and they did not hear. I want to make sure they did not hear what happened. Unfortunately, something startled my daughter, and she came out before, as I was coming out, and she greeted me in the hallway, and she said, "Daddy, what happened?" I said, "Nothing. I'm like my own daughter." So she wouldn't be around. I said, "Come on, baby, let's go back to bed." And I went back and looked at the room. And I gave her this one before me. I said, "Daddy, Daddy's away." I'm watching the house, and it's mine. I heard it happen. I'm sorry, baby, I lied to you. I did not want her to get over. So I took her back in bed. And I went to check on my wife. And she was okay. She was drifting off to sleep at that point. Her medication was working rather good. And she'd gone to bed about 10:45. So she didn't hear the fireworks. And my son was completely booked at this point. He was shortly in bed and sleeping right after that. So I know he did hear. So after I took my little girl back in the bed, went back out and just kept my eye on the corner.
Then we head to approximately 6 o'clock.
All right, so you're moving ahead another hour?
I think at this point, we're moving to right at midnight.
So about another hour from the piece you were just at?
Yes, sir. And during this hour, after you heard what you believe to be shot, are you still in the house?
Yes, sir.
You still watching, waiting?
Yes, sir.
Anything of significance happen that increases your alarm?
After 11 o'clock, as I'm calming myself down, I turned the video off the TV and turned the wheel on and played Star Wars movie for about 15 minutes, just to relax. That's all I wanted to do was just relax. And I went to the kitchen and I got me a snack. Just a small bowl of cereal just to be on my stomach since I had taken the Klonopin. I didn't want it to upset my stomach. And the milk would coat my stomach. So approximately 20 minutes go by from 11 p.m. when I took the Klonopin. Had my cereal and played the Wii. So some things were going on outside that I could hear, but I didn't react to. Nothing that had me alarmed at that point.
Anything specific or just noises?
Noises, haunting, average run-of-the-mill stuff that they go on. The Klonopin started to work about 20 minutes into the evening, after 11. I started to relax. And I started to feel it.
And take me over to the room at midnight.
Can I stop you right there, Greg? You see that flickering light right there?
So I was about to draw your attention to Mr. Woodward. Did you see that flickering?
From my kitchen bay window, I'm watching them with a device trying to get something lit. Now, what bothers me is that it's dark over there. My fear, as I'm watching this, is a Molotov cocktail coming through my glass window if they get it lit and run up to my yard. All I do is watch. But it alarms me. So I maintain at this point. Continue, please.
Now, throughout this period of time, I want to take it through this whole session, and I'm going to ask you questions. But you're watching the whole time, you're seeing this real time. It's not something that is a refreshed recollection, it's not something you've seen on the tape, something you recall actually seeing that time. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. Thank you. Please.
Who is it, sir?
That is right cool, talking about getting a hotel room. I can hear him through my front window asking him about the price of a hotel room.
Why is that a concern to you?
It actually is a concern to me. The reason why I'm pointing it out is because he wants to move out of the Gary Henry house. That's what the conversation is about, what I'm hearing through my glass window.
Okay.
That's why I'm bringing it up to you. I'm listening to their conversation.
Right.
He's inquiring about the cost of the hotel room so he can leave. Keep in mind now, there's 9 people living in a 3-bedroom, one-bath house. So there's a lot of stress across the street that I have witnessed. So that's what this conversation is about. That's why I want you to stop so I can tell you what this conversation is about.
I do appreciate that. But did this conversation cause you in any way to be more or less concerned for your family's sake?
No, sir, this is for the record. This is a fact, and I'm letting you know what this conversation is about.
Okay, well, that's fine. Watching them through the window, can you actually identify who it is that's holding up whatever they're burning?
No, sir, because at that point right there, when I see the fire lit, whatever time that is, I'm not even paying attention to time in my house.
I understand.
When I see the fire lit, is when I go and grab my firearm from my storage place.
And what about that caused you to arm yourself?
Because I didn't know if that was a Molotov cocktail fixing to come through and into my house. So that point, and like I told you, at this point I'm not aware of what time it is in my house. All I can see is the danger that's in front of my house. Inside my house, I'm armed.
Right. Okay.
So I'm just pointing out.
Yeah, again, just so the court understands.
Okay.
You don't actually see all of this burning incident because you're in a different part of the house. The beginning of the burning, or at least at this point when things are clearly burning, you decide you need to arm yourself. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Did you mind my bedroom?
Take any other action, did you change your clothing, did you do anything else in terms of,
Yes, sir. I've already completely dressed.
okay? Now, how were you dressed that night?
T-shirt, pants, and shoes.
Okay? What kind of pants?
Camouflage pants. My
Okay.
tiger pants.
All right. At some point in time, you have a jacket. When do you get your jacket?
Same time I grab my pistol.
Okay. So you get your pistol and you get your jacket. Do you get anything else?
Yes, sir. Didn't need anything else. Well, I think
What
I got
pistol do you get?
my 9FS92 with the clip sitting right on top of it. I grabbed that one.
Okay. Now, is that gun loaded?
Yes, sir, it is.
Well, it is chambered.
Yes, sir. Always.
Did it have a clip in it or did you put a clip in it?
Yes, sir. It already came with a clip.
Okay.
It was already clipped.
And it had a second clip for reloading.
Sit right on top of the pistol.
Okay. You have a holster.
Yes, sir. I have a holster.
You put it in a holster.
It was already holstered.
Okay. You strap the holster on. Tell us more what you did in terms of arming yourself. Let's do the details.
When I saw the blaze begin to ignite, I walked straight back to my bedroom, walked right into my clothes closet, opened it up, pulled the clip off the top, slipped it in my left pocket, holstered my weapon to my belt, grabbed my BDU jacket, walked right out to the kitchen table, set it back on, and began my surveillance.
Okay. Well, we're stopping with that. Why did you call the police at that point? You're burning something, you're afraid it might be a Molotov cocktail, why did you call the police?
Well, at that point, there was no incursion upon my property.
Okay. Did you have any confidence the police would do anything?
No, sir.
Did you have concern that these people might do something to you and your family?
Yes.
Was there anything about any of your interactions with the police over the previous month that led you to believe that you had made a telephone call and reported everything you had seen up until that point that they would do anything? Anything they had done that would lead you to believe that they would react to what you were telling them?
No, they will not react.
Because that's the matter.
I was convinced of that. In fact, they had shown proof of it.
Now, I'm going to play this, but I want you to tell the court when on this video you go back to a position where you can actually see it. You told us at approximately at this time.
Yeah.
You're not watching what's going on, you're going and you're arming yourself. You also ended what you took up today once again. So tell the court when you're back to where you're actually seeing this real time. Ask me to stop whenever we get to the point where you're watching this real time.
Right there.
Now, these comments that are being screamed, can you actually hear them?
Yeah. Why else?
Okay. Can you identify who's making those
Yeah,
comments?
very good.
And did those comments themselves cause you any concern?
No.
Okay. So again, what's got your attention at this point is the fact that they're burning something, and you're afraid that they might be a threat to your home.
I'm just focused on the fire.
All right. So, for what period of time after the fire do you continue to watch in your home? Approximately. How long do you stay in your house?
I don't know the exact time, but I know that there's a period of time after the fire that I leave my house.
Okay. Well, I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but
Okay.
what I'm trying to get is, if you recall, if you don't recall, that's fine. About how long did you stay in your house watching before you decided that you needed to go outside of your house?
I don't believe it was very long.
Okay.
Maybe a matter of a couple minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes.
Why did you decide to leave your house?
But at that point, it convinced me that I needed to be outside my house to be a buffer
What do you mean by a buffer?
and to surveil them even more closely.
What do you mean by a buffer? I don't understand a buffer.
I can't protect my family inside the house from fire. If they make an incursion upon my property with weapons and fire and manpower,
So you wanted to put yourself in between your family and the danger?
I have to, sir.
Okay.
If I'm inside my house, I'm trapped like a rat in a cage. I only made a decision to leave my house to surveil them.
Well, let's talk about that. Right now, they've done some pretty horrendous things, made some pretty horrendous threats, and demonstrated to you that they have the ability to carry out the threat.
That's correct.
Said things that made you angry.
Yes, sir.
Said things that made you concerned.
That's correct.
Said things that just disgusted you. Right?
About my wife and children, especially.
So why didn't you just walk over there and kill them all?
Well, because you just don't do things like that, sir.
to that corner.
Coming into the screen? That's me, sir.
Describe to the court the route that you've taken in order to get to the position where you're actually seen on camera.
Excuse me. When my bay window, I put on my jacket, light it up, then my kitchen door, which is 4 feet from my bay window, I locked the deadbolt, and I locked the door lock.
Why do you lock the door?
So that if I was rushed to kill, they couldn't come back into my house through the door, they would have to come through the windows. I went out to my back garage door, or my carport door, garage carport, let me just closed it quietly, went outside my back gate, dropped my keys by my gate post where the gate closes, so that if they just blew off steam and got drunk and went back inside, I could go back inside my house and prepare my room in the morning like we originally planned, my wife and I.
So let's talk about get drunk blow off steam. Did you have some reason to believe you'd be drinking that night?
Yeah, I can see them in cans, beer cans. You can see it running off the street light in my room. There's a street light, they have their lights, I can see the beer cans.
About how long a period did you been observing the drinking?
Well, we got home until after 9 o'clock. I can see beer cans in their hands.
Midnight now.
Midnight.
Any period of time did you believe that they weren't drinking?
No, sir.
The fact that they've been drinking all that period of time, did that do anything in terms of your concerns?
Other than brief periods of time of assisting my wife with the children, getting them to bed, I kept them under a fairly constant surveillance.
I understand, but the fact that they had been drinking, did that play any part in your thought process?
Yes, because drunk people do really stupid things.
Have these particular people demonstrated to you through their actions in the past that they were more inclined to do stupid things when they were drunk?
Yes.
So you're, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You have described to me that you had taken a position, closed and locked your kitchen door, and you did what to get to the position where you could be seen in the camera?
When I walked out my back garage door, I went immediately to my yard gate, which is a swinging gate. I dropped my keys at the gate post, closed my gate. My keys were dropped there for a specific reason to allow me to get back in my house once they blew off steam, went back in and went to sleep off the hangover. I could come back into my house. They're standing. All I was doing out there was for a brother into surveillance, into listen. That's why my keys were there. I knew they were there. Only I knew they
Okay.
that they were there. I could come back in, go back inside, and begin the moving process for the next day. That's why my trailer's there.
Why are you crawling on the ground?
So they can't see me, sir. They see me, but come over and enter the truck.
And they demonstrated to you through their actions not only this evening, but if they saw you, that would incite them to action as opposed to deter action.
Well, yes, sir. I had just had a conversation earlier that they wanted to draw me out to the street. They wanted to fight me. And they wanted me to go to jail. And they made an incursion on my property with a firearm. So yes, I have to be invisible to them. They're never making me to keep my eyes and ears on what they're saying and doing unless I'm invisible to them.
Okay. So where do you take up your surveillance?
As you... Am I still in the front of the screen?
I can move it further a little bit. You are this for
Okay. Anyway, in that way, a car spooks me, so I jump back in and go back to the front of my truck. And then I make it from the front of my truck right line of sight and line of hearing directly to their front yard where all the action is. I can hear them and I can see them perfectly. There's not a single branch moving on my tree. There's no wind. There's nothing to interfere with my hearing or my vision. So I've got the perfect surveillance of everything they're doing. That's all I'm doing. Is a buffer to see them coming before they can see me. That's all.
While you were there, did you see or hear them do anything that causes you concern?
Yes, sir. As I advance further, and as time goes on, now I can hear them conspiring about my own death.
In what way?
They're talking about shooting me, and it's going to be legal in the Constitution. That's Roger and Gary talking, as they're sitting outside in Gary's front yard, up close to the house. That I can see with one eye. Gary's even wearing his shirt, the yellowish orange shirt, and Roger's wearing a horizontal striped blue and light blue shirt, dark blue, medium blue. I can see that clear as day. And I can hear him talking about he got his ass whipped at the courthouse. Now it's a retaliation. When we get him out there to fight, boom, you get to shoot him in self-defense. I'm not doubting. I can hear what they're saying. They lure me out. I beat up Gary. Well, Gary's got a 22 on him. Pow! It's a conspiracy to commit murder that I'm listening and hearing. My own death. And you're going to do it coming up. But I can hear it in my yard.
Now at that point, do you jump up and shoot it?
No! And my mom, yes. That's why I'm out there, is to be in trouble between myself and my family. Because now this is real. This is gone beyond a playful journey, as they call it. This is not a joke anymore, Mr. Eisenberg. This is real life.
At that point in time, did you have a concern that they were armed?
Yes, I did.
Based on what?
Testifying of the weapon and the conversation about with the two girls that I heard, and they walking up into my driveway with a firearm. Because the two girls confirmed that they had a firearm, and they said, he's got a gun. Oh my God, he's got a gun. They didn't know I could hear them say that. So why would they put on a show for me? My house is blacked out. There's not a single light on in my house.
There's 25. Yeah, 25 acres. Into this floor is 25 acres.
So you're moving ahead in about 20 minutes or so?
Possible. Now, is it during this 20-minute, well, I'm trying to move it up to the point that you just told us about when you hear this conversation about shooting, etc. But in the intervening time, as we've heard in court, have you been in a position where you can hear the other comments and threats that are made through this 20-minute period?
Yes, sir, I can hear every person and everything that they're saying with clarity.
Can you relate to the court some of the things that you heard them say during this intervening 20-minute period that I just skipped forward on before we get to the point where they're talking about being able to legally shoot you?
By the other party?
Yes.
No, sir, my main focus was on the males. Roger, Gary, and Bruce.
Well, I mean, just let me do it like this, then.
If you're asking me if I killed all six of them, and all attention, all six, no, I did not.
I'm asking you that in this period of time, when you're sitting there surveilling the situation, did you hear other than this talk about killing you, other threats, comments, etc., directed toward you and your family?
Specifically? Yes.
What type of things do you recall?
After they made the conspiracy,
No, before they make the conspiracy, in that 20-minute period. And if you don't recall, I'll tell you and see if it refreshes your recollection.
that's right, I do not recall. I remember during this time frame, inching along the ground to place myself into that position.
Okay.
Because there was a period of time where not much was being said other than, hopefully, general conversation. If that makes sense to you, sir.
Now let's get. I want 2150. I would start with 2200. Start with 2200. I want you to listen to the sequence, see if it refreshes your recollection about whether or not you heard this or whether or not you didn't hear it. That time.
I can hear this, what's being said.
Just listen to this, see if it refreshes your recollection. They're going to ask you some questions if it does. So listen. Having heard that said, do you have a refreshed recollection of whether or not there were comments that you actually heard in this time period between when you first took up surveillance and you heard these comments about legally shooting?
Yes, sir.
And what things do you recall them saying?
Are you talking about threatening comments or just
Threatening comments.
There were, obviously what we just heard,
Okay.
what I heard came out of their mouth.
Okay. You heard that?
Yes, sir. I'm on the ground and I'm looking and watching this.
Okay.
I can hear it from today. Will they stop that, Greg?
The conversation you're referring to?
That's the specific conversation I was tuned into about them conspiring to shoot me after a fist fight with Gary. That's the specific preference that had me highly concerned.
Now, at that point in time, if we can talk from surveillance, you still haven't acted other than surveillance. Did there come a point in time that you heard or observed something that caused you to snap, to take action?
Later on, you're going to hear what I heard was them gathering forces.
Describe to the court what you heard and perceived, and what you thought was occurring.
Gather weapons. Come on, let's do it. Let's go do this. Let's end this. It's a gathering of forces. It caused me to snap into action and do what I did.
Now, you, various times after you talked to the police, you actually talked about that you snapped. You went into what you described as soldier mode or warrior mode. What did you mean by that?
I was trained, you know, to warfare. Just like every soldier who enters basic training, you're trained in the basic infantry tactics. And I was trained in advanced infantry tactics. It's Schofield Barracks, Hawaii, 25th Infantry Division. Part of my promotion steps, 2E5.
Now, when you actually heard the comment, we're going to end this, you described gathering up the forces, all that. What was your belief about what was going to happen?
That they were now coming to the house to dispatch with myself, my wife, and my children. And at that point, yes, that was the point I had to take action because I could not let my children die.
Did you have any doubt that violence was imminent?
Yes, sir. Not a shadow of a doubt at that point. Because when I heard, get up, let's get this, let's gather the forces, let's get your weapons. And at that point, it was get back. One of them already had a firearm. It had already been established. They had already established the fact that they were making fire. And the fact that there were 6 adults, 5 dogs at their disposal. That's a lot of weight to bear upon one male, one female, and 2 children.
And is that what caused you to snap?
Step in action? Yes, sir.
Snap into warrior mode? Snap into soldier mode, whatever you want to refer to it as?
If you want to, no, my military training has never left me. I was trained as a soldier. There may be people in this courtroom who are trained as soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen. They're familiar with warfare.
Is that where you were at that point in time, or you're in one?
You know where I was. War had been declared upon my house and family for myself. Now I'm the only living link between my wife and children in imminent death. I'm the only living link that separates them from horrible death. Do you not understand that, sir?
When you hear that, when you hear those words, they convince you that that is about to happen. What is it that you do?
I turned that corner, and I engaged my first target.
Who was your first target?
Right in the corner, we were wrestling with a male child over a baseball bat, over the possession of a baseball bat. And you're going to hear that baseball bat fall to the ground as I shoot him. You're going to hear that bat fall to the ground as I watch it fall out of his hands. First, run disarmed, hits the ground. Is that crazy, sir?
Yes, there it is. Now what happens next?
And I leaned over. I head straight to Bruce's garage, because I do not see Gary members. And as soon as I make eye contact with Bruce's body, he emerges from his game box where he's got multiple weapons and tools at his disposal. And I engage his torso with multiple rounds, and I follow him to that game box until he cannot move. Sir, and my weapon is out of ammunition. I reload at that point, knowing that he cannot move to that game box, and pick up a weapon and engage me. I then walked around, right, the cool body. He was still moving at that point, which gives me cause of concern. And then the porch light at Gary Henry's house comes on. Gary Henry walks out of the garage with Kim right behind him. He said, what the hell is here, or what the hell is going on here? And his hand rose, just like this, right at me. And I engage him with one shot to the chest, center mass. He falls to the ground, and I rapidly move to his body, and engage his body with multiple shots to make sure he cannot have what is in his hand.
Did you learn at that point what was in his hand?
After the fact, a coffee mug, sir.
What did you think it was at the time you shot him in the
A pistol. When you lower your hand in this fashion toward another human being, that's a pistol. I immediately engaged him. I didn't even hesitate.
What did you do now?
I walked right back around the rubber cold body. The baseball bat was lying on the concrete, and I re-engaged his body to make sure that he could not get back up and take that baseball bat to me.
What do you mean, re-engage?
Get up and fight.
What did you do to him to make sure he could not carry on the fight with you?
I put more bullets into his body because he was still alive, sir.
But based on your training and the mode that you were in, on the battlefield, does a single soldier leave a viable enemy behind him?
You cannot, sir, because that enemy will get up and shoot you in the back, as has been displayed with many of our wars in previous history. A lot of our Vietnam veterans were shot in the back by the Viet Cong. In World War II, Germans would play dead, get up and shoot our Americans in the back. Korea, Desert Storm. Check that, not Desert Storm. In our current state in Iraq, which we had just seen 10 horrible years of warfare, yes, Iraqis would play dead, turn around and shoot our GIs in the back. All the way back to World War I, sir.
What else did you do after you made sure that the Corps was not able to attack you?
I heard Jessica Little screaming behind me. At that point, my firearm was cocked to the rear empty. When I heard her screaming, I was alone at that point that someone was coming up behind me, so I raised my pistol to where the screaming was coming from. And I immediately threw my head and I followed around with my pistol. I released the slide went forward and I pulled the trigger to make sure that she knew to stay away from me. Once I realized she had no weapons and she was just screaming, that I made eye contact with her, I holstered my pistol and I left the scene. Then I walked back to my house. And someone asked me, did you get a ball? And that's when I went, yes, I got a ball. And I walked back up into my yard after taking off my jacket. I walked back up to retrieve my keys from their hiding place, knowing that the 3 males were no longer fit. When I heard silence, I was at peace, because I was closer here, and they can help me sort this out. And I could tell them what happened. And I could tell them that everything was finally over. And I praise God and I praise Jesus Christ for those Officer Anderson. He's a very, very kind officer. And I surrendered my weapons to him.
Did you, after you surrendered your weapons to them, did you talk with them about what happened?
It was best that I can remember. And his questions that he asked.
Okay, sure.
How long is it?
About 8 minutes.
Yeah, you can play that and then stop.
Yeah,
That'll be a
when
good
we
way.
go down, and we'll return to the day.
Thank you. And that's exhibit
Yeah.
7. Did Mr. Woodward understand what he play this?
I do not.
All right, sir, you can rejoin your attorneys and relax, have a seat.
Attorneys may approach. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a brief restroom stretch break, so if you'd leave your notebooks on your chairs and make sure that you follow all of my instructions during our brief 10-minute recess. Thank you. We are back on the record in case number 2012 CF 55504A, State of Florida versus William Woodward. I'll note the presence of Mr. Woodward at council table with Mr. Eisenmenger and Mr. Eisenmenger, and the presence of Mr. Respis and Mr. Shiner on behalf of the state. We're ready to bring the jury back in and finish the publication of 147? Okay, let's bring the jury back in. So I intend to simply instruct the jury what you are about to hear from this court proceeding has already been received in evidence as State's Exhibit number 16 and has already been published to the jury. Agreeable to the state? Agreeable to defense? Yes. Thank you. You all may be seated. Jury's present. We are ready. Please be seated. Jury is back in the courtroom once again. And ladies and gentlemen, did you follow my instructions during our brief recess? Yes. Is anyone aware of any violations of any of my instructions? No. All right, we're ready to resume the publication of number 147. And ladies and gentlemen, what you are about to hear from this court proceeding has already been received in evidence as State's Exhibit number 16 and has already been published to the jury. You may continue.
Okay, whenever you're ready.
This is Clint Williamson of the Tasker Police Department. Today's date is September 3rd, 2012. It's approximately 0044 hours. I am on Smith Drive, reference to a shooting that just occurred on May 1960 Smith Drive. One white male detained. I'll see. Okay, now for lawyers, so the Tasker Police Department will ask you some questions about what's happening. I think I mentioned once before. I want to ask you some questions about what happened here, but I want to read your rights first, okay? Yes, sir. All right. You have the right to remain silent. Do you understand that? Yes, sir. No. Anything you say may be used against you in a court of law. Do you understand that? Yes, sir. You have the right to speak to an attorney if you wish. Do you understand that? Yes, sir. You understand that if you cannot afford an attorney, one will be represented to assist you if you wish. You understand that you may start answering questions now, and that if you decide to do so, you may stop answering questions at any time until you've consulted with an attorney? Okay, with those rights in mind, do you wish to talk to me now? Alright, stand up. If you want to stand up, okay, that's all we do. I need help, you want to help you this knee out? Yes, sir. Okay. Line up this way. No problem. I'm an old soldier now, I'm not used to this. Okay, what do you mean by your low call? Low call? Straight from where? From the side yard of my house. The side yard of your house? Where do you live at? 1960. Okay, when did you low call? My side yard, sir. Okay. What happened with the shooting? What was going on with that? Sir? I was tired of living here. Okay, what were you alive? What happened this evening? 18 number?
Yes, sir.
And where do they live?
1950 Smith Drive South, 1940 Smith Drive South. 1940 Smith Drive South service where Bruce Lane lived.
Okay. Where do you say live for you now?
Well, he's dead now, sir.
How long is he dead?
He got shot, sir.
Where did you shoot him?
He was retreating back into his house and shot multiple times. After he was dead, sir.
How many times did he shot him?
Lost count, sir.
Was he armed?
He was unarmed, sir.
Unarmed? Okay, what about the other two people that were shot?
They were unarmed, sir.
You know who the other two that were shot?
Here in Henry,
Where was he shot at?
he was shot in the torso. And when he went down, I followed it to the side of the car, sir. And I followed it up with multiple rounds. And then one round to the head, I believe, sir.
How far were you when you did the shot to the head?
One blank, sir.
Point blank. He was unarmed, you said?
Yes, sir.
What about the other?
Roger, I shot in the torso, approximately 3 times. He was on the ground only, so I followed that with 2 shots to the head, I think maybe the third.
Okay.
I wanted to make sure he was dead, sir, because he didn't perform in my family.
How he been forming in your family?
We have it documented and on tape, sir, and on video surveillance.
How has it been?
He was found not in the past night, we had it on video where he was screaming, threats and, violent threats. And,
What was he saying?
I'm like, yeah, sir, right here. You would have to have my wife go back with you, sir. He was yelling and screaming across the road. I could hear what was no problem. It might be the war.
Why do you say you're low calling? You said you're low calling.
No, sir. That's how soldiers sneak up on the road.
Okay, so they weren't expecting you, they didn't know you were coming? Alright. Why do you say pray? You pray.
So I'm going to go.
Okay.
This is not good. You know, the end.
Alright.
Not as fast as I'm tired of living in here, I'm tired of my family having to live in here.
Okay.
I'm tired of my family having to live in here. I'm tired of having my hands tied. I'm tired of going to the problem.
Alright, so you decided to take actions on in your own hands?
I snapped.
Okay. Alright, what weapon did you have with you?
I had a Desperado, 92, 9mm, 2 clips.
Alright.
I had approximately, I had accurate 16 rounds loaded. My second clip was 15 rounds.
Okay. Where did you get the firearm from?
I borrowed it from my father, from
When was that?
the last visit that Officer Hector and Officer Matthew by the house. When we were alive, they, it was Wednesday, 29th of August. When they said that they had firearms, that they were going to shoot us with them. And I asked Officer Hector if it was appropriate for a firearm from my father for his home protection. Yeah, my office role. I never planned on taking this action, sir. You have to understand, I'm a 7-11, so it's really.
What kind of ammunition did you have?
I've got a focus vector for the concrete side, so I still have a gun. I have internal brain damage. I'm heavily medicated.
Did you want to take right now?
Yes, sir.
What medication do you want?
Celexa, or some alkaline hydromide, Urmate, Woodward, and a narcotic called Law&Crime.
I believe you're which name again?
William A. Woodward,
What's your birth?
10/26/68,
Where do you live at?
1960 Smith Drive, right here.
What is social security number?
589-32-2457, sir.
Did you swear that you told me the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir, I'm not lying to you at all. Yes, yes, yes.
No, I'm sitting here, that's right, man, I want to speak to you. Also, I can try to see here, I'm going to make sure that there's work. Double check and make sure they're not, you got a little bit of room in them. So just keep your hands like that, with your fingers as close together like that as possible.
Can you send another officer to supervise me, because I can't sit down?
Sorry, I'm just going to move a little bit closer over there, I'm going to try to be there, right? So yeah, see there from you, Woodward.
Nothing's really.
I understand.
My nephew used to play around with
cop puts in the passenger too. Hold on a second. I'm okay. Oh, you have a copy of that? Oh, okay. There are apparently 3 victims in this case, and suspects are all.
Thank you, everybody. We'll be at recess till tomorrow at 9 o'clock for this case. I do have some stuff in the morning, kind of a lengthy plea and some other things, so your things won't be disturbed, but I do have some stuff going on at 8 o'clock. Yeah, I'm expecting to. I mean, the police, yes. Thank you, everybody. To retake the witness stand, please. You're still under oath.
We ended yesterday with playing the statement that you gave police officer, Chris Rock. You saw that? Yes, I did. Now, I want to comment on this a little bit. Basically, during that interview, he asked you, and you acknowledged, that the 3 individuals that you shot were unarmed. Is that correct?
That's
When did you actually determine that they were unarmed?
after they had fallen in 4 shot.
And how did you determine that they were unarmed? Now, up until the point that you actually rounded the corner and began shooting, did you know at that point that they were unarmed?
No, sir.
Now, I believe that you had mentioned yesterday that, excuse me, losing my voice, that the first individual that you shot, Roger, was actually, between he and his son, had what you thought was a baseball bat. Is that correct?
I didn't testify that it was the son, I said a boy.
A boy, okay.
But they were wrestling over the possession of a baseball bat.
And you had mentioned, first, while you were in court on multiple occasions, did you hear what you believed to be the sound of that bat hitting the ground?
I saw the bat hit the ground, sir.
I understand. That wasn't the question I asked you. I'm going to ask you that question. But just on the tape yourself, is it audible on the tape, the sound of that bat hitting the ground?
Yes,
Right after you shot it.
it.
Now, you also, at various times yesterday, testified that you actually heard them talking at different times in the evening about that. And Mr. Blake himself confirmed that he heard that, and we've heard it multiple times now, played in court, that there was discussion about that.
That is correct.
Now, I want to show you photographs of the scene that are part of our composite feed. That are encompassed in Defendant's Exhibit 4. But these are actually printouts of various things. That's just
The exhibit 4 is just a CD of the photos. And these are
all of the photos. These are printout of some, not all of the photos, but some. Composite Exhibit M, composite single Exhibit L, and single Exhibit K, all part of
the CD of Defendant's Exhibit 4, and actually print copies. But we've got it.
juror number 87, do you have an issue with your headset, or are you having difficulty hearing?
No, when the mic is too low right now, when it was up higher, it was perfect.
Okay, is that causing some feedback for you, sir?
Yes.
Okay, all right, can we see if we can do a better adjustment on the volume so that the gentleman won't have any feedback on their headsets?
Judge, I'm just going to back it up just a little bit.
All right, let's just do a quick play and then pause so we can double check.
First, while you were in court on multiple occasions, did you hear what you believed to be the sound
Better?
of that bat hitting the ground?
Okay,
I saw the bat hit the ground, sir.
I understand, that wasn't the question I asked you. I'm going to ask you that question. But just on the tape yourself, is it audible on the tape, the sound of that bat hitting the ground?
Yes,
Right
sir.
after you shot it.
Very clear.
Now, you also, at various times yesterday, testified that you actually heard them talking at different times in the evening about that.
That's correct, sir.
And Mr. Blake himself confirmed that he heard that, and we've heard it multiple times now, played in court, that there was discussion about that.
That is correct.
Now, I want to show you photographs of the scene that are part of our composite feed. That are encompassed in Defendant's Exhibit 4. But these are actually printouts of various things. That's just been
The exhibit 4 is just a CD of the photos, and these are
all of those. These are printout of some, not all of the photos, but some. Composite exhibit M, composite single exhibit L, and single exhibit K are all part of the CD, which is Defendant's Exhibit 4.
any objection to the print copies coming in?
Oh, no, we provided.
Okay, well, let's mark them into evidence, and then you can go ahead and use them for whatever.
Let me see what else I have.
Okay, well, please just give them an exhibit number into evidence, and then we'll refer to them after.
Sir, I want to show you the basically every scene photo. Mr. Woodward, these are showing you now, as Exhibit 12, 13, 14. Photographs that we took for all the photographs that the police took that show various signs of the scene after they were lost. We'll look through any of those and see if you can find that which you saw or that Mr. White testified that he had been, that they had been using or and talking about anywhere on the scene.
Just these two pictures?
No, all those pictures.
Can I undo the?
If you need to, sure, yeah. Try and keep them together because it's a composite exhibit, but you can unclip them.
So you want me to turn them over in order?
Yes, sir. You can keep them however you want. I just want you to examine any of them. I just want you to keep those because they were all put together. You can unclip them to look at them, but please, after you finish looking at them, put them back. That's close enough.
Okay, first question is, you see any bats?
Neighbors.
Now, you actually saw a bat that night, right?
Yes, sir, I did.
You heard Bruce Blake agree that they had bats that night.
That's correct.
I think his explanation was something like they were using it to beat on the boys that were wrestling on the loser. You heard that?
As far as this
What was his testimony?
Yes, sir.
And he also acknowledged, and we heard in court on multiple occasions, they're talking about the bats. Where would the bat have been? Strike that. What area on those photographs would have depicted the area where the bat had struck?
It would have been, if you approach, sir, I'll give you a rough idea. You see Blake traveling.
Okay, what I want to do is for the court to see it, not so much for me to see it.
I need to see it too.
Come on. This is part of composite exhibit. Okay. And this is the area that shows the,
Can I stand please? Your Honor? Where Mr. Kakur's body was and where the two people were wrestling. When Roger Kakur slumped over, the bat fell out of his hand and hit the driver's chair where the plank was. I stepped over that bat to enter the Blake driver, stepped around the rear of the Blake car. Now, to my memory, the Blake car has been moved to Morrison. Now, it appears as though the scene's been changed. Car's been changed.
you left right after you ascertained that they were unarmed and no longer a threat, is that correct?
That's correct.
Went back to your home. You don't know what was done to the scene in the interim between when you left and the police arrived and secured the scene, is that correct?
That's right, I do not.
I want to talk with you about some of the language that you used in talking with them. You were questioned by the police officer about what you meant by low crawling. And you explained to them that that's how soldiers sneak up on their prey. What did you mean by that?
Well, sir, on the field of battle, when you are approaching an enemy camp or an enemy position, or if you are seeking to put yourself in a position for a raid or an ambush, you use the low crawl to keep yourself in a position where if the enemy is using night vision devices or in daytime binoculars, if they scan a horizon, if all they see is flat level ground, or if they don't detect the movement of bushes, and that is to your advantage. If you're under fire, you use the low crawl to keep yourself at ground level or possibly below ground level. This way, if bullets are coming at you, they go over top. You don't want anything to be seen or shot, especially your body. In the military, they teach you to be as low as possible. And in my position that night, I used the low crawl also favoring my left side. I was able to keep my left ear tuned in that direction. That is why I favored my left side over my right side.
Why did you use the terminology prey?
be honest with you, I don't know. It was just off the cuff at that point.
Now, yesterday when you were testifying, we showed you the video, and you had indicated that when you first saw them attempting to light something, that's when you moved from observing them and armed yourself. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, you said at that point in time that your initial concern, you didn't know what they were lighting, and you were concerned that it might be a Molotov cocktail, correct?
That's
But after you armed yourself and you moved in a position you could see, you could tell that it wasn't a Molotov cocktail, correct? And is that the reason that you continued just to surveil rather than take action at that point? If they had, at that point in time, approached your house, looked like they were throwing something at your house like a Molotov cocktail, carrying out their threats to burn your house in some way, would you have acted rather than just watch?
If they had encroached on my property, at that point, I was armed and I could have exited my front door and then dispatched them on my property.
Okay. And so, even though you had concerns about what it was, as soon as you were able to allay somewhat the concerns that at least firebombing was not imminent, you did not act. Is that correct?
That's the reason.
And likewise, after you had taken up your position outside the house, where you put yourself between them and your family, which you put it yesterday at buffer, and they were making insulting and inflammatory statements towards you, not even knowing that you were that close, you still didn't act, correct?
That's the reason.
Why didn't you have a reason to?
Well, because the threat was not imminent at that point.
Had they taken action, words or actions to which you believe that they were getting ready to act, would you have acted?
Of course, at that point, then I was ready to act. But they had given me no reason to act at that point.
So you weren't just shooting them because they were harassing your family.
No, sir.
You weren't just shooting them because they were saying nasty things about you and your family.
No, sir, that's not a reason to shoot at.
Why is it that you acted?
Because I heard them saying, let's get together and do this. Grab your weapons, let's go. Let's end this. At that point, it was time to act. And I had no other choice but to act at that moment.
When you heard the words, let's end it, the words to that effect, what did you think they were about to do?
Cross the line and do something. Bring my life with me.
Was there any way that you were going to let them get to a point where they could physically harm your wife and children?
I was not going to let them get to my bed.
Did you have concerns that that's where they were going and what they were going to do?
Absolutely, sir. And at the point, they would have to step over my dead body to do it. They would not think.
I would come to the witness.
Mr. Woodward, this was a military operation as far as you were concerned, correct? Mr. Woodward? Mr. Woodward?
No, So this was not a military operation, this was just me observing, placing myself between them and my family with military training to back me up. This was not a full-scale military operation as you see it, sir.
Well, you told the officer that you were back on the battlefield.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I was trained.
Training. Okay, well, let's get, how much time did you spend on the battlefield?
Actually on the battlefield.
Yes, sir.
If you recall, and I'm sure your memory is very clear, Persian Gulf War lasted from February 16th to February, maybe mid-February, late February. So I believe it was referred to as the 100-hour war, or I don't know, the ground war was 100 hours. So it wasn't very long.
No, I'm asking you personally, sir. How much time did you personally spend in infantry combat on the battlefield?
Infantry combat?
Yes, sir.
Zero.
Zero?
Full guard, sir.
Oh, okay, so you never actually engaged in actual battlefield combat yourself?
I never testified that I did, sir.
Oh, you said you were back on the battlefield, that's what you told the police officer. What battlefield were you back on, standing guard?
Well, if you count running from Scud missiles, that's battlefield.
Oh, okay. Now, you testified that you had advanced infantry training,
That's correct, sir.
but you never actually engaged in any infantry combat, did you?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I was trained for it, but I praise God that I never had to engage and kill anybody.
Okay, let's talk about your training. During your infantry training, were you taught that it's common practice and acceptable to execute a helpless wounded enemy lying on the ground? They teach you that in your training?
Yes, sir.
Are you aware, sir, that that's a war crime?
Yes, pardon me.
So it's your testimony that you were trained during your formal Army military training to execute the wounded enemy laying helpless on the ground. The United States Army trained you and taught you to do that.
The Army did not train me to do that.
Oh, okay.
That was the steps I took.
That was what?
That was the steps I took to make sure they could not get back up to the weapon.
Well, you gave some testimony here that that's common. They've done this in all wars. They did it in World War II, and they did it in Korea, and they did all these things that they commonly shot the people when they were on the ground to prevent them from getting up. Were you trained to do that by the military?
Actually, sir,
Actually,
in simulated combat training, we exposed a lot of rounds into enemy bodies.
that's not what I asked you. Did the military train you to stand over the wounded, helpless enemy laying on the ground and shoot them, execute them?
No, sir, they didn't. And yes, you are correct, that is a war crime. I let you give it to me.
Now, you indicated that you did the low crawling because that's the tactic you use so that they can't see you with night vision. Did those people over at the Henry House have night vision?
No, sir, that a floodlight shined on my house.
Okay, so the whole thing about night vision really was just your imagination?
No, sir.
When you heard what you believed was 4 gunshots, particularly a .22 caliber gunshot, why didn't you call the Titusville Police Department and say, we got shots being fired, people next door to me are firing a gun? Why didn't you do that?
Well, sir, the police didn't act on the previous calls.
Did they always come out when you called them?
Not always.
Oh, okay. Tell me how many times you called the Titusville Police Department that they didn't respond.
Let's see. I called myself personally once for an escort back to the house. They came 10 minutes.
But they came. Okay, so every time you called the police, they came.
My recollection, they eventually came.
Eventually, but they came.
No action was taken.
But they showed up.
Yes.
If you'd have called them that night and said gunfire's happening over there, they'd have, as far as you knew, they'd have showed up, correct?
Objection, calls for speculation.
Based on your experience, they'd have showed up.
I mean, if there's an objection, let me go on. That's a different question.
All right, so they'd always come in the past, correct?
Ask and answer.
They always came in the past, right? Now, when you looked out your window and saw what, in your mind, was a Molotov cocktail being lit. By the way, how far from your house was that you saw what you thought was a Molotov cocktail?
That would be,
60 feet.
linear.
Okay. And I guess I probably need to ask you, tell me what you believe a Molotov cocktail is.
A glass, bottle, with a wick, little gasoline or some other kind of oil.
Okay, and how is it used?
Throw it into a vehicle, throw it at somebody, or you throw it into a glove. It breaks, shatters, creates fire.
And basically, it's got a rag or something, you light the end of it and then throw it, correct? What happens if you light that and don't throw it?
It's going to burn.
It's going to blow you up, blow yourself up, right?
And
How long did you watch that thing burning before you decided to quit watching and go get your gun?
just watch the video. I watched it long enough to realize it was not a Molotov cocktail.
So by the time you went and got your gun, you already realized it was not a Molotov cocktail.
I just testified to that.
Okay. You indicated, you said you went to the state attorney's office about all this and they refused to help you. Who specifically did you talk to at the state attorney's office?
The very nice lady sitting there.
At the front desk, the reception desk?
Yes.
In fact, didn't she tell you that the state attorney's office doesn't investigate matters, that you needed to go to the Titusville Police Department?
Objection. Sir, be here.
Mr. Woodward, remember, like with everybody else, it's probably to your advantage if your lawyer's objecting to stop talking.
They were both talking the same time.
Well, another example of the same thing. Mr. Day, if you do me the courtesy, let me rule on an objection before you continue talking.
Once he objected, I shut up.
Everybody is talking at once. And Mr. Eisenmaker, if you would, promptly and loudly announce the legal basis for your objection, I'd be glad to rule on it.
Here, sir.
Sustained. Go ahead.
Judge, I'm not offering for the truth of the matter asserted.
Sure you are. Sustained. They're offering you to prove that the state attorney's office told him you don't do that kind of stuff. There's no other reason for that question. Ask him something else.
So the only person at the state attorney's office you spoke with was the receptionist at the front desk.
She redirected the question to a state attorney. When the answer came back to her, she relayed what a state attorney had told her.
So you never actually spoke with a state attorney?
She wouldn't allow me to, sir. She got the information from the state attorney.
Okay.
They would not allow me access to the state attorney.
So, did you ever gather up all these videos that you had?
I didn't, sir.
No. Let me finish my questions. Get with all your neighbors in that neighborhood who had been putting up with this for so long. Did you ever get all that together and make an appointment with Mr. Wolfinger, the state attorney, to bring this to his attention?
Literally not.
Okay, so you really didn't make much of an effort to get the state attorney involved in this, did you?
Objection, argument.
Any further?
All right. Redirect.
When you, as part of your military training, were you trained not to leave a enemy combatant who could represent a threat to you or your fellow soldiers behind?
That's correct, sir.
Now, Mr. Beatty threw in the shoot a wounded, helpless person as being a war crime. Did you shoot a wounded, helpless person? Did you know that the person was not a threat to you any longer when you shot them?
No, they were not helpless. They were wounded, but in my opinion, and as I saw it, they were still threatening.
And is that the only reason that you dispatched them?
That's correct, sir. I want to make sure that they could not continue on with their threat.
Now, in a military sense, you were a one-man operation, correct?
At that point, yes, sir, it was one against all of them.
Okay. Now, again, part of your training is a rare situation where a soldier is put in a situation where it is a single soldier engaging multiple enemy combatants, correct? Objection is to relevance.
That's correct, sir.
So most of your training involved a situation where you were working in concert with other soldiers, correct?
That's correct.
But your training did touch on what would happen if you did find yourself in a situation where it was, for whatever reason, you against multiple enemies, correct?
Accidentally, I remember Fort Jackson, South Carolina, when I was taught to fight that way, to very cruelly and without prejudice, crush a man's throat and leave him there. Even if he was unarmed, to finish him off with a very violent crush to the throat and the skull. To take the butt of my weapon and crush his skull in. If you want to go that far with it, sir, yes, sir. We were taught to take an unarmed soldier and crush his skull with the butt of my weapon and bayonet him until he could no longer move. So yes, Mr. Bailey.
Mr. Woodward, you're answering my question. You are not addressing Mr. Beatty.
Yes, sir. We were taught to take it to that extreme, to bayonet, crush a soldier to death.
Now, Mr. Woodward, you said that the Titusville Police Department always eventually showed up, correct? And they didn't take any action to protect you or your family. You previously testified to that, correct?
That's right.
And we saw, at least on one occasion where it's demonstrated, about how long did these people cease in their activities against your family after the police left, based on your experience?
Just a matter of minutes, and they were right back.
So even if you had called the police and reported what you knew to be gunshots, did you have any expectations they would do anything?
Objection, speculation.
It's his state of mind.
Can you repeat that? None, everything's taken care of.
Thank you. Even if you had called the police when you heard the gunshots, and they eventually showed up, did you have any expectation they would take any action?
The police,
Yes.
I believe they wouldn't take any action.
Okay. But even after they left, did you have any expectation that calling the police would cause these people to cease in their activities against you?
No, in fact, on previous occasions, it empowered them after the police left, and it would increase their spirit of, all right, we got away with it again, now we can keep on going. We gotta keep on going.
And did you have any expectation that if you called the police, they would remain on 24-hour, 7 days a week guarding of your home to protect you against these activities, against the people and your neighbors, against you?
Please back up and say that one more time, it's a little too fast.
Okay, my fault. My adrenaline's wrong. Based on your experience, would they have left a police officer on guard to guard your family, to put an officer between them, your family and these people as a buffer, like you placed yourself as a buffer between your family? Did you think?
They would not.
Now, the nice lady at the state attorney's office, just for the record, I know that the court already knows this, but I would like to establish it for the record. She's behind a glass window and a locked door, correct?
That's correct.
Nobody gets past her. She's the gatekeeper. Nobody gets to talk to anybody but her unless someone in the state attorney's office decides, correct?
That is correct.
And so when you went there to make an appointment to talk with the state attorney, she's the one you talked to, right?
Yes, sir. Actually, on.
I don't want you to repeat what you said,
Thank you.
okay? I'm not asking for hearsay. But your purpose was trying to get an appointment with a state attorney to get help, right?
That's correct.
You would have been satisfied with even an assistant like Mr. Beatty. You didn't actually need to go all the way to the top and talk with Mr. Wolfinger, did you?
I didn't care. I just want to talk to somebody.
Okay. But they wouldn't even allow you to talk with an assistant, much less the state attorney, would they?
No, sir.
And they weren't interested in how much stuff you had to show them.
Judge, this is objection, this is total speculation. We have no idea what you told me. Speculation.
Now, let's talk about gathering up your videos and gathering up your witnesses. That's exactly what you did for the injunction hearing, correct?
That is correct.
And you didn't get to play your videos for Judge Moxley, did you?
No, sir, we did not.
And you didn't get, Judge Moxley wasn't interested in talking to your witnesses, was he?
No, sir, we would not.
Nothing further.
Any more cross? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, John.
Please call your next witness.
I will call Lena Huntington.
All right. Lena.
Judge, I can abbreviate this one.
Right, that concludes the publication of states number 147 in evidence. May I have the attorney's approach? All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and take a 10-minute recess. If you would leave your notebooks on your chairs and make sure that you follow all of my instructions during our recess. Thank you. Please be seated. We'll be in recess for 10 minutes. Thank you. Please be seated. The jury is present again in the courtroom. And ladies and gentlemen of the jury, did you follow all of my instructions during our brief recess?
Yes.
Is anyone aware of any violations of any of my instructions? No. All right, very well. State may call its next witness.
Kristen Durfee.
All right, Ms. Durfee, please. Mr. Schuyler. Just one moment, ma'am. If you please raise your right hand to be sworn in. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right, please have a seat over here on the witness stand. You would state your full name.
Kristen Durfee,
Go ahead.
apologies, Durfee.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Ms. Durfee, where is it you're employed?
I'm employed with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement in the Orlando Regional Operating Center.
Okay. And what is it that you actually do for the Florida Department of Law Enforcement?
I'm a crime laboratory analyst assigned to our firearms section, so I'm responsible for examining firearms to determine their functionality and to also do microscopic comparisons of fired components, such as bullets and cartridge cases.
Now, how long have you been working for the Florida Department of Law Enforcement in the firearms section?
A little over 10 years.
And had you worked for the Florida Department of Law Enforcement before you worked in the firearms section, or is that where you were assigned from the beginning?
Yes, I first started working for FDLE in the chemistry section for a year before my transfer to the firearms section.
Okay. So let's talk about how it is or what training or experience you'd had that caused FDLE to hire you to work in the crime lab at all? What background training or experience did you have, educational experience otherwise?
Yes, I have a Bachelor's of Science in Forensic Science with minors in Biology and Chemistry from Waynesburg University in Pennsylvania.
Okay. And I want to focus on your jobs in the firearms section. When you started working in the firearms section in 2010, what was your first job with them?
My first job was as a forensic technologist. I held that position for about a year and a half before my promotion to my current position as an analyst.
Okay. And what was it that you were doing initially that's changed now? So what was your job as a forensic technologist in the firearms section?
So my primary responsibilities were to examine firearms to determine their functionality. The additional responsibility of an analyst is then to also look at the fired components microscopically.
Okay. And did you receive training from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement in how to do that job? And I want to focus on it because it's really two different jobs you're talking about. The first one is to recognize and determine the functionality of a firearm. Is that what you described?
That is correct.
All right. And so what training did you receive so that you would recognize and understand the functionality of a firearm?
So that was about a 6-month hands-on structured training program just in the areas of firearms function.
Okay. Did that include different makes and models of firearms and how these particular weapons operated?
Yes, it did.
Now, did you also receive training in what you described as the second part of what is now your job, which is comparing known samples to unknown samples in the firearms field?
Yes.
And can you tell us the training that you went through in that area?
Yes, so that was a 14-month, again, structured hands-on training program that involved work on the microscope for physically comparing items that were fired from firearms to determine if they came from a particular source. So if bullets came from a particular firearm, if cartridge cases came from a particular firearm.
Okay. And what's the science behind your, or the thing that you're relying on in order to make these comparisons?
Yes, so it's based on the science that due to the manufacturing process, the use and abuse of an item, that no tools will leave exactly the same marks.
Okay. Now, did they put you through the training and say, okay, you're good to go, or was there more to it than that?
There was more to it. Part of the structured training program was in-house coursework, so reading different materials, touring certain firearms factories. It then also culminated in casework assistance. So I worked cases with other qualified analysts for a number of months. It then culminated in both an oral board, so I was tested on my knowledge, and then also a mock trial where I worked a mock case. We had a similar courtroom situation to this, and I was also tested in that. So I did pass all of those elements of my training.
Okay. So when did you actually begin with doing what I described as bench work, which is work at the lab that can lead to you testifying here in court? When did you actually start doing that?
So for the microscopic comparison, that would be November of 2011. I previously was qualified for testifying as an expert in the field of firearms function at the culmination of my forensic technologist training. So I had been testifying in that field for several years. However, the microscopic comparison was November 2011.
Okay. Now, since November of 2011, have you testified in the courts of Florida?
Yes, I have. I've testified 42 times in 7 different counties in Florida.
All right. And did all those involve testimony concerning expertise related to firearms and/or tool mark identification when you were making comparisons or offering opinions on your comparisons from known to unknown samples obtained from crime scenes?
Yes, it did.
All right. So I want to start with a case I believe you became involved with that had an FDLE number of 2012-050-9091. Did you become involved in that case?
Yes, I did.
When did you become involved?
This case was submitted to our laboratory on September 25th of 2012.
Now I'm going to show you some items that have been received in evidence. The first is Exhibit 128. I want to ask if you recognize, just looking at the box and the evidence tape on the box, if you recognize that particular exhibit.
Yes, I do.
How would you able to recognize?
So I recognize that every single case that comes into the FDLE laboratory will get a unique FDLE case number. So that's the number that you mentioned, the 2012-050-9091. A yellow sticker will be affixed on the box. It also has an exhibit number. So I recognize it both by that and my own markings here on the box as well of the case number, the exhibit number, and my initials.
I see some red tape, and it looks like there's also some clear tape on that box.
Yes.
All right. Do you recall the condition of the box when you first received it?
I have a note here that it was received in a sealed condition.
And did you enter into that box?
Yes, I did.
What did you find when you entered into the box?
So in this box contained one 9mm Luger caliber Beretta model 92 FS semi-automatic pistol.
Okay. And were you able to locate a serial number associated with that weapon?
Yes, I was.
And what serial number did you associate with the weapon that you received?
Serial number is BER 418593.
Did you happen to leave any markings behind on that weapon after you became involved in it?
Yes, I did. One of my first things that I will do when I open a case is to physically mark that piece of evidence. I have an abbreviated case number that I marked on the frame in front of the trigger guard on this firearm.
Now I'd ask do you see your seals on the box before we start into it? Do you see where you sealed it?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And are those the red tape on the box, or what is yours? Can you show?
Yes, it's a red tape. It says FDLE, and my markings are in blue. It's my initials and also the date of seal.
Okay. So when you got done with that box and what was inside that box, how did it leave your possession?
It left it in a sealed condition.
Could you look in that box and see if what you put in there is in there today?
Yes, it is.
How is it you're able to recognize that particular item as the same item that you placed there after you've done your examination?
I recognize the abbreviated case number, the exhibit number, and my initials written in my handwriting on this evidence.
Okay. And you can take it out. We'll talk about it a little bit. And I'm going to ask the court to remove the cable that's in the arm so I can have the witness demonstrate how it functions. But ask permission to the court deputy to remove the feature that makes the weapon safe at this point.
Need deputy's assistance then?
Okay. Now, before we do anything, can you hold it up and describe describe, it appears that something is pulled back on the top of the firearm. Can you describe the condition of the weapon as you see it right now?
Yes, so this firearm, the slide or this top portion of the firearm is pulled all the way back and locked. There's actually a little piece right here, and there's a notch that fits into that will hold that slide open.
Now, can you examine that weapon to determine if it's safe for us to do some demonstrations in court?
Yes, it is. This firearm is unloaded.
Okay. And can you make the weapon so the slide is in the normal position and not pulled in that lockback position?
Yes, so this lever here, pulling that down will release the slide, and that lets the slide travel forward.
Okay. And can you describe, I know that we talked about, you said I received this and you described it. The make of the firearm is what?
So this is a Beretta.
And the caliber of the firearm is what?
Is a 9mm Luger.
So what type of ammunition can that firearm shoot?
So this firearm is designed to fire 9mm Luger caliber ammunition. That's what the caliber is designated on this firearm, and that's what that means. So when a firearm says that it's a 9mm Luger, it's designed to fire 9mm Luger caliber cartridges.
Okay. I want to show you what's been received in evidence as Exhibit 126. And ask if you recognize that as
Yes, I do.
How is it you're able to recognize the exhibit from the package?
Again, there's the yellow FDLE sticker, which has the case number and the exhibit number on it, and also my markings in my handwriting of the exhibit number, the case number, and my initials.
Okay. And what did you receive in that package?
And this package is 2 magazines.
Okay. And did you receive that package in conjunction with the firearm that's laying in front of you, right?
Yes, they were all submitted at the same time to the laboratory.
Now, when you when you received the package, was it in a sealed condition?
Yes, it was.
And do you see where you actually entered into that particular package?
Yes, I do.
Can you show the jury where that is?
On the side here, you can see there's this red piece of evidence tape, so that would have been retaped when I sealed this evidence to return it to the agency.
And does it actually have FDLE on it so it's easy to indicate?
Yes, the evidence tape itself says evidence FDLE OROC. And then there's also my initials and the date of seal.
Is there also a yellow label that you put on like you did on the firearm?
Yes, and that is actually put in by our evidence section as soon as this piece of evidence comes in. That's not something that I personally affix to this evidence.
Right. So your agency did that. That's something you saw before you ever opened the package?
That is correct. I will double check that just to make sure that it is the correct case that I'm working in evidence under.
All right. And I'd like you to look in, I believe that they put some masking tape on the top of the package for the last.
Yes.
All right. If you could enter in through there, because that's where the scissors were used, I think that takes it off fairly easy. If not, I'll get you a pair of scissors and we'll start.
Okay, I think I have it.
Okay. You can toss that aside. All right. You look in that package and see if you recognize those items. And I'm going to ask you how you recognize those items. Specifically related to this.
Yes, I do recognize them.
And how is it you're able to recognize those items as something you've seen before?
There's an abbreviated FDLE case number, an exhibit number, and initials in my handwriting on both of these pieces of evidence.
Okay. Now, how do the exhibits in 126 relate or function with the firearm that you have laying in front of you?
Both of these magazines were compatible with this firearm.
Can you orient or show the jury how one would relate to the other?
I'm sorry, I don't think I
In
understand
other
the
words,
question.
how would the magazine be used in conjunction with the firearm? That's what I'm
Yes. So in this type of firearm, it's a magazine fed. So you can actually see there's a hole in the bottom of this firearm. It's the magazine well. That's designed to fit a magazine in there. The magazine will be inserted in that rear portion, and you can hear that lock into place. At that point then, a user could pull back if that magazine had cartridges in it. That motion of the slide moving forward would take that first cartridge, load it in the chamber, and now that firing process is ready. To remove the magazine, there's a button on the left-hand side of the firearm. Pressing that releases the magazine.
Now, are you satisfied the weapon's still safe having put the magazine into the firearm?
Yes, I am. The magazine does not have any cartridges in it, and the firearm itself is still in an unloaded condition.
Now, I wanted to ask you about how the firearm functions when there's a round in the magazine that could be captured and placed into the firearm. Explain how the firearm functions to become loaded and ready to operate.
Sure. So again, the user would load the magazine with cartridges or unfired units of ammunition. That would then be placed in the magazine well. For this demonstration, since there are no cartridges in here, pulling the slide back will actually lift up this lever and lock the slide rearward. So I'm going to eject the magazine, but typically it would be staying in this firearm. The user would pull the slide back. That would then, releasing it, it's under spring tension. That forward motion would take that first cartridge and strip it off of the top of this magazine. It would load it into the chamber or this rear portion of the barrel here. That forward motion, now it's ready to fire. The user can pull the trigger. That will drop the hammer, which will send the firing pin forward to strike the rear portion or the primer of that cartridge case. That little mini explosion will send the bullet out of the barrel of the firearm. Those opposing forces will then slam that now fired cartridge case back against the rear or breech face portion of the gun. That'll push the slide rearward. Once that slide is fully back, that now fired cartridge case will be both extracted and ejected out of that firearm. Now that forward motion of the slide again will take the next cartridge from the magazine, and that whole process can start over again, either until there are no more cartridges left in the magazine or the user is not shooting anymore.
Okay. So I want to talk about the capacity of the magazine. Did you note how many rounds the magazine could have in it to be full?
Yes, both of these magazines were stamped with the number 15, so a capacity of 15 in the magazine.
Is it possible for the weapon to have 16 rounds available, including 15 in the magazine?
Yes, what a user could do is fill the magazine, load one in the chamber, then eject the magazine and load one more in that magazine. So the magazine still holds 15, but then there could be one in the chamber.
Now, I want to talk about that particular firearm. Is there a direction or a side of the weapon that the port that ejects the spent casing is located?
So this entire top portion gets exposed when that fire cartridge case comes out. So while the extractor is located on this side of the slide and the ejector is located on this side of the slide, that does not necessarily mean that the cartridge case is going to come specifically in one direction. Direction is not something that I note during my examination, as it can vary. But in some way, that fire cartridge case would be removed from this firearm in this top portion.
Okay. And so are you telling us this is a firearm that's designed where it doesn't have the port on one side or the other firearm, it's just basically open at the top?
That is correct.
All right. Because there are firearms that have one or other of those features. This one is open at the top.
That is correct.
All right. So, and I think you answered this, you couldn't predict necessarily which way, which side, or straight above the cartridge cases would fall in relation to where the shooter was.
No, I cannot.
Did you test and see what it took as far as force to make that firearm work?
Yes, I did.
Can you explain what I'm asking? Can you explain what you did?
Sure. So in this firearm, it's what's called a single action and a double action. So when we talk about the action of the firearm, we're talking about the amount of steps that are required to release that firing mechanism. So in this case, it works two different ways. So in single action, that refers to what the trigger does. So if I were to let the slide go now, you can see this rear or hammered portion of the firearm is already back. So pulling the trigger now performs one action. It simply drops the hammer. Once that hammer is dropped, you could pull the trigger again, and in double action, it would both cock and release the hammer. That's considered double action because the trigger is performing two separate actions. There are two different trigger pulls, so the amount of weight that it would be required for that trigger to come fully rearward and release that firing mechanism. In single action, it was measured between 4 3/4 and 5 1/4 pounds, and in double action, it was 9 3/4 to 10 pounds.
Okay. And I want to ask some questions about that, just so I'm clear. If you pull the slide back and put the round in the chamber, you cock the weapon.
That is correct.
Right. Does that mean that the weapon is then in single action?
That is correct.
Now, if you put the hammer, if you loaded the weapon and put the hammer down, and then pull the trigger, is that what you're referring to as double action?
Yes, it is.
So, if the weapon is loaded but not cocked, then that particular firearm, you can pull the trigger with extra force and get the process started. Is that what you're telling us?
Yes, that is correct.
Now, after the weapon has been fired and it's cycled through the process you described and loaded another round in the chamber, is the firearm then in single action, cocked, ready to go?
Yes, it is.
All right. So when would be the times, other than what I described, that you would have double action and having to pull harder? When would you be using that firearm in a double action scenario as opposed to a single action?
That's solely up to the user. There is what's called a decock safety on this side of the firearm. So if I pulled this safety down, it actually releases the hammer, turning that safety off. Now this firearm is in a double action mode. So anytime this firearm is loaded or any of that cycling process happens, it's automatically going to default into that single action firing mode. However, the user can get out of that mode by using this decock safety.
Okay. So, and I'm just asking the situation that I described where the hammer's down and a round is in the chamber would be a situation where one could start the weapon in double action. Is that fair?
Yes, so now this firearm is in double action mode. So you can see that hammer here is in the downward resting position. If I pulled it back, now it's in the single action position.
But after the weapon is fired, every time the slide goes, it cycles a spent casing and strips another round until it's out of ammunition. Every time that happens, it's going to be in single action mode unless somebody drops the hammer down on as you described.
That is correct.
Okay. I'm going to hand you a lot of exhibits.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to put the firearm and the magazines just nearby, but side. Okay. I think I have these in numerical order because Mr. Shiner did it. Start with Exhibit 55. Let's go pull these up here. 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, all right. I think when we left off, I was on 66. I'll ask you to look at that.
Yes.
All right. Then the next one that I'm going to ask you to look at is 142, 143, 144, 145. Put the master's date on it. 146. 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, and 93. Did you recognize all those packages?
Yes, I do.
How is it you're able to recognize all those packages?
So again, every one of these packages has a yellow FDLE sticker affixed to the front of it with the case number and the exhibit number. Below that, on every single one of these packages is also in my own handwriting, the exhibit number, the FDLE case number, and my initials.
Okay. And so I kind of want to start at the beginning again. I want to go through each of these packages and discuss what condition it was when you received it. So I think we started here. And that was with 55. Let's go to this file first. Looking at 55, you indicated you recognize it, but I'd like to know what condition it was in when you received it.
It was received in a sealed condition.
Objection. Can we approach?
The attorneys may approach. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and stop at this point for our lunch recess. So I'll ask you to put your notebooks on your chairs. And I'll ask you to return at 10 after 1 so that we can start promptly at 1:15. The witness may step down in the interim. And again, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, make sure that you follow all of my instructions over the lunch recess. At this time, you may be excused.
All right.